Quello che sta accadendo oramai ordinariamente da lungo tempo in quella parte che chiamiamo Cisgiordania è ancora troppo lontano dal nostro sguardo, dalla nostra attenzione.
Una parte
abbandonata. E abbiamo bisogno davvero di fare uno sforzo tutti per rimettere al centro quello che sta succedendo anche lì. Rima Hali, avvocata palestinese, amica. Prego, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us to give different views of and different angles of the Palestinian problem. Everybody thinks about October 7 as the beginning of time, when actually Gaza was in the eyes of the world, the Western world, in 1917, when Britain tried 3 times to conquer Gaza and failed. And then that was in May 1917. And then in November 1917, it decided it's going to do what it does best. Colonial settlement, which is what it did in America and what it did in Australia. And so it did issue the Balfour Declaration, promising the land it does not own to people that do not form a nation, actually, because one of the ministers that was in the British government at that time was Jewish, and when they said, we will create a country for the Jews, he objected because he said, I am British, and Judaism is my religion and not my nationality. At any rate, Britain decided to do that anyway. They decided that it's a good idea to bring people and claim that the country that they're bringing the people to was a country without people, and it was arid, and they're going to make it green. And so the story went for some time. In 1948, the promise was crowned with the recognition in the United Nations, whereby the concept of a two-state solution was born. And the concept of the two-state solution was that the newcomers would get 77% of the country of historic Palestine, and the indigenous people will get 22%. And that was also really a big joke, because they had their eye on the 22%, and we just spoke about the settlements and about what's happening in the West Bank, and they wanted to Swiss cheese it. And Swiss cheese, if you know Swiss cheese, it has a lot of dots. And those dots, by time, if you age the cheese, the dot gets bigger, and therefore they take more of the land. And all of it is stolen land. We should start by saying the people of Gaza actually came from the shores of Palestine, from Jaffa, Akka, and what is known now as Tel Aviv. They came as refugees to Gaza for a few days, few weeks, whatever, because the British helped them go either there or to other Arab countries into refugee camps until the war that the British started finishes. And they took their keys with them, and they never went back. Now, at the moment, what October 7 did is actually expose fault lines that are much bigger than Palestine, the Palestinians, and Gaza. The first fault line that was exposed is actually the UN, the impotency of the UN in front of blatant aggression, in front of genocide. You know, some people try to redefine what genocide is. It has to be 6 million people that is killed so that it actually reaches the level of a genocide, when genocide legally is not defined that way, but they tried in this way to define it this way. But the fault lines is that the UN actually has a mechanism to stop what's going on. But first of all, we got stuck in the Security Council, and with the veto of the Americans, that the president now wants to be declared as the Nobel Peace Prize person when they raised their hand every time we talked about ceasefire or any peaceful solution to the Palestinian, they vetoed it. And that order comes from the White House, directly from the president. So the first fault line is that even the mechanisms that work were not employed in the UN. And there are plenty of those to go to the General Assembly, either peacefully or by force, to employ these mechanisms. The second fault line is actually the academic institutions in America. When students went out and did encampments in the universities, they exposed one thing, that people pay their hard-earned money for a university, and the profits in the university go to actually investments in the military industry of Israel. And everybody was asking for divestment, and they were called terrorists and they were called anti-Semites for asking for their university to divest from investing in military industry. Secondly, it actually made them look very silly, because if they're teaching constitutional rights, whereby there's freedom of speech, peaceful assembly, and all of this, nice concepts, and they were sending the police to arrest them. They were sending the police they were not giving them their educational degrees, they were refusing to graduate them, they were expelling them from the university. And so it is going to be very silly for the professor to stand and give a lecture about the civil rights in America when none of them are being actually exercised on the campus itself. The final fault line is actually between the Americans themselves, as people and their government. A lot of people could not stomach what is happening in Gaza. And so a large percentage of the Jewish population joined the Palestinians in actually asking for the stopping of the genocide. And the movement of the Jews was called Not in My Name. You cannot claim that you are doing the genocide in the name of the Jewish population, because not all Jews actually agree with the Zionists in Israel as to what they are doing. The second fault line is that the average American actually that was trying to explain the repugnancy of what's going on was called anti-Semitic. And none of them feel anti-Semitic actually, and none of them hate just for the purpose of hating Jews. The most important thing is that both parties struggled. The American Democratic Party struggled because they were standing to speak about abortion, gay rights, and all the other rights, while they are actually helping genocide happen. And the second one is actually the most important one now, because it's in government, which is the right-wing party, the Republican Party, which claims to have a motto of America First. And for the first time, they are paying attention to money that is actually going to Israel in the billions. One final thought on the money that comes to Israel is actually what people were talking about this morning, which is the military industry. $3.8 billion go every year to Israel, come hell or high water. Doesn't matter if there is a problem or no, if there's a war or there isn't. And this money stays in America, and it goes to the Martin Mariettas, the Lockheed Martin, and all the military industry. And so this is how war feeds war year after year, and they have to buy all of these things, and they have to use them and test them, and they did test them on Gaza. They tested everything on Gaza. But I have to tell you one thing, the population in Gaza survived all empires. They survived the Phoenician Empire, which is actually the Canaanite Empire. They survived the Pharaohs. They survived the Roman Empire. They survived the British Empire. They survived the Ottoman Empire. And they will survive the Zionist Empire. Thank you very much.